Welcome back. In case you're wondering, the brat was really, really good. David Becker joins me now for something that we did on America Decides, and we are carrying over here to the takeout. We call it Democracy Watch. The goal is to keep tabs on news about elections, legal disputes, threats to election workers, and attendant issues. David, always great to see you. Thanks for joining me.
Good to see you too, Major.
So, a couple of weeks ago, the president had an executive order and talked expansively about what didn't happen. We know didn't happen in the 2020 election. It wasn't stolen, wasn't illegal, wasn't a fraud,
right.
But he had an executive order and keeps talking about his role in changing the way federal elections are conducted. What role does he have?
Well, the founders, when they wrote the Constitution, were really concerned that a king might try to take over America, basically rule by fiat, by the swipe of a pen. And so the genius is how they wrote the Constitution to prevent that. First, they made the legislature the Article I branch, Congress. And then they specifically said in Article I that elections shall be regulated, the time, place, and manner of elections, by the states, and only Congress can act. They were very careful. The executive, the president, has no role in elections whatsoever. It's genius how they did this. And this is one of the reasons, I think, that as he's making pronouncements from the Oval Office, he's having a lot of trouble in court because the courts are recognizing, and even people like Senator McConnell have very much recognized, that the Congress is the only body that can overrule the states in how they run elections.
And if Congress writes legislation and it passes and the president signs it, that can influence and give guidance to elections.
Absolutely. And
that's happened.
And that's happened. The Voting Rights Act, the National Voter Registration Act, the Help America Vote Act, all examples of Congress saying there's an urgent need for us to act to create some national standards. We're going to do that. Those all passed on a bipartisan basis, pretty much, and were signed into law by different presidents. The Voting Rights Act was passed on a bipartisan basis and signed into law with extensions by presidents of both parties as recently as 2006 by President Bush. So this is not that common, but it does happen. But generally, the states have the authority to run elections, and both Democrats and Republicans have acknowledged that over time.
This executive order targeted Chris Krebs, among other people, who worked for the Trump administration, carried out the edicts of the Trump administration, and now is subject to an executive order. Talk a little bit about Chris Krebs, but also the effect that this executive order has had across the country with election officials looking at that and wondering what it might mean for them.
Yeah, Chris Krebs was an appointee of President Trump in his first term to the position of Director of the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency as part of the Department of Homeland Security. And all of the activity that was alleged by President Trump in an executive order took place under the Trump administration, under his authority in the first administration. And apparently the cardinal sin that Chris Krebs engaged in was making the truthful, factual comment that the 2020 election was the most secure, transparent, and verified election in American history. And over the past 4.5 years, that's been proven true time and time again.
There's courthouse after courthouse after courthouse.
Dozens of them. There's still not a shred of evidence put forward by anyone that would indicate otherwise. And even when the individuals were accused of defamation, people like Rudy Giuliani and Carrie Lake, in cases where they had made false claims about the election, they declined to put on any evidence that the election was actually stolen.
So what happens to Chris now?
Well, I mean, he's targeted his employer. Chris has stepped away from his employer for now. I think we'll see what happens. I think I would expect that there might be some activity, perhaps legal activity in the future.
Challenge it?
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly.
And how about the echoing effect nationwide?
That's the real concern, is that election officials, these public servants who've worked so hard to really do a remarkable job under incredible strains in hurricanes and pandemics, whose work has withstood scrutiny every single time, they're seeing the power of the White House and the federal government potentially be targeted at them. I think they're going to be okay. I think the federal government doesn't have a lot they can do to them. Ultimately, he's not prosecuting Chris Krebs. He's asking for a report from the Department of Homeland Security. And the biggest thing he did to Chris was take away his global entry, which means he's going to wait a little bit longer to get into the country when he comes into the country. But so far, people aren't being arrested. People aren't being charged. But election officials are concerned because the White House is powerful.
Democrats.
Not just Democrats, perhaps even more so Republicans, because it took more courage from the side of Republicans who were supporting an election for a candidate that they didn't vote for in all likelihood, that they were
Meaning that they administered an election, Biden won, and they had to say that's the verified actual result, even though they were Republicans.
Which is what they do. It's the same thing Democrats did.
It's the calling of that job.
Exactly. In 2024, Democrats did the same thing. Democratic secretaries, every single one of them, if Trump won their state, stood up and said, President Trump won this state. And that's the way it should work. But particularly the Republicans who stood up for that in 2020 might be more concerned. And it's unfortunate because these are some of the most patriotic, diligent public servants we have in this country.
And very quickly, David, you would say the stress level for those in this space is still pretty high?
Yeah, and it's similar to a lot of others who are working in the country right now, where it seems like everything's on quicksand. We're not sure what's going to happen next. There's rumors of other executive orders. There's changes in policy. Does the executive order on elections take effect? There are two big lawsuits still out there by the states that are likely going to enjoin almost all of that executive order. But until those things are resolved,
still feels uncertain.
It's a stress level, yeah.
David Becker, thanks so much for joining us for the first, and I hope not the last, conversation here at the Conversation Corner, because we need to do something really important. Because I opened the show with a tie rack. Kyle Lewis, one of our great stage managers, just brought it out. This is what, ladies and gentlemen, I regard as, and I'm calling officially, because I can do that, it's my show, the golden takeout tie rack. What is this? All the neckties I used to wear. April 2nd was Trump's Liberation Day. April 1st was mine. No neckties since April 1st. So I want people, when they come to the studio, to think of this as a leave a penny, take a penny experience. If you like a tie, take one. If you want to leave one of your neckties, you can do that. Anyway, the golden takeout tie rack will be a permanent part of the takeout experience.